What started as my first coffee shop turned into 10. So I switched to the Spark Cash Card from Capital One. I earn unlimited 2% cash back on every business purchase. Like this. That's thousands of dollars going back into my business. What's in your wallet?
Capital One Bank USA, N.A.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guests and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of S4, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast or reproduction of this broadcast or podcast without express written consent of S4 is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to S4 Radio. Coming to you live from the dark side of midnight. Climb aboard as we explore all aspects of the paranormal, from UFOs and Bigfoot to ghosts and astral travel, and all the fringe subjects in between. You have found the cutting edge of paranormal talk radio with your host, Eric Cooper, and our S4 panel of specialists. Prepare to go to the edge. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to S4 with Eric Cooper, broadcasting live from our beautiful mountains of concrete. Tonight, in our mid-year show, we will be discussing open topics. Tonight on our panel, we have Michael Hall, the paranormal lawyer, owner of UFO I-Team, myself, Corey Reese, and your host, Forest Moon Paranormal Zone, Mr. Eric Cooper.
Hey, good evening, everyone. And, yeah, welcome to the smoky air of concrete, because we have fires going on right now. So, you know, again, for the locals that are listening, we do have the booth at the Skagit Upriver Farmers Market, and that's the one in the swap meet. And today we had our disaster and safety fair, which we had an awesome turnout. It was a great event, got a lot of information put out, because yes, Forest Moon Paranormal actually does disaster management and things of that nature, as well as paranormal, which is always fun. August 18th, we have our Sky Watch. If you're local, get a hold of me directly, and I'll see about squeezing you in so you can be there, because it's actually going to be more of a team event with UFO I-Team. But for locals that are part of the team, by all means, join us. So tonight, yes, is the mid-year. How has the year been going? What do we have projections for the last half of the year? And we have a very small panel tonight, but it's going to be fun anyway. How are we all doing tonight?
We're doing wonderful. You got the paranormal lawyer here, so who knows what could happen.
Hey, I'm doing great on this end.
And speaking of which, I have some very bad news. Due to some personal issues, Markham won't be able to make Paracon, but we have Michael Hall is actually going to be joining us as a speaker. And what are you going to be talking about, Michael?
Well, I thought I would talk about the legal ramifications of UFO investigation, as well as I thought I'd maybe just kind of give everyone an update on what's going on with the UFO I-Team and some of the amazing phenomena, including UFOs, that we've been catching on tape around the state. So it's going to be a fun hour. If you want to give me that long, I'd love to be able to tell the people what's going on around us in the skies right above their heads.
Oh yeah, you have a full hour. Our Keith, being the keynote, is going to have 90 minutes, but everybody else has a full hour to lecture and talk. A lot of great responses to Paracon this year too. I'm happy because being as we move to a much larger venue, we have a whole lot more opportunity.
Oh yeah.
And, I mean, we have Bigfoot teams out there that are sharing the event. We have some very, very large Washington State organizations that are sharing the event. So the word's getting out quick. So let's kick it off with you, Michael. What have you seen anything significant in the first 6 months? And I know we're in the seventh. We're in the eighth month now, but in the first half of the year, did everything you projected happen?
Well, it really started out with a bang, when you're actually talking about the beginning of the year and actually the last part of 2017, where the Department of Defense and the Pentagon came out with an article in the front page of the New York Times. That was December 16th of last year. And so it kind of kicked off the entire 2018 with a fervor of people going, well, you mean the Pentagon and the Department of Defense have been studying these UFOs and they haven't been telling us? They put about $22 million over 5 years in that whole idea, and they actually confirmed in the New York Times that UFOs exist. So not only did they exist, but they were also saying in the article that they had captured a down craft, actually, and they were studying the metamaterials that this thing was made out of. So, boy, was that a huge start to 2018 when people, after the holidays, kind of digested the whole idea that the government, for the very first time, U.S. government anyway, for the very first time admitted to the existence of UFOs.
Well, and didn't they, I can't remember if it was last year or if this year, didn't they release the gun camera footage of a fighter craft that actually caught a UFO, and they had a second craft, or second plane, I believe?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Matter of fact, in that New York Times article, they had a link to two videotapes from gun camera footage of FA-18 fighter jets that were based off of the Nimitz aircraft carrier in just off the coast in Southern California. The actual footage itself had been around a while. I believe it came from like 2012, it was earlier than that, but they just released it at the same time that this article came out, where the Navy fighters are actually commenting to the fact that this, what they call it, a Tic Tac of UFO, came from 80,000 feet down to the surface of the ocean in 5 seconds. That's how fast this thing was moving. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. And they were following this thing and actually getting it on videotape off their gun cameras. Then the interesting part of that sighting was not only was this it wasn't little, it was probably about 40 foot in diameter object, was hovering over the ocean, but underneath the surface of the ocean, the pilots were mentioning that there was a much larger craft that was actually very close to the surface and looked as if it was going to dock, or at least the smaller one was going to dock with it underneath the water. That was fascinating to hear too. So all of a sudden we're calling UFOs exist, and we're also talking about USOs underwater, under the surface of the water objects as well. So,
unidentified submergible objects.
Exactly. Yeah. And from that point on, I was kind of expecting that January or at least February would have some kind of a major follow-up announcement, that we were kind of on the verge of potentially not full disclosure, but much more of the soft disclosure that was trickling out into the news. But that hasn't happened yet. And there was kind of a lag time, and people are kind of thinking, or they kind of course, the public doesn't have a very long memory, so they're thinking, well, maybe it's not important anymore. Maybe they're not actually pursuing this. So it will be very interesting to see what happens before December of this year, because that would be less than a year, it'd be just a year basically before they actually confirmed UFOs, and whether they are going to now take another step before December of this year. That will be fascinating.
Right. Now, and you got my wheel spinning here. So with that, why do you think there's a lag? And I got to say, you know what? The History Channel's got a new movie coming out in December that I just can't wait to see, and that's Project Blue Book.
Yes.
I believe is the name of it. And I can't wait for it because, I mean, they actually, it looks fairly accurate as far as they've got J. Allen Hynek, portrayed in it. And obviously not the real, they got actors for it, but they actually portrayed J. Allen Hynek in the movie. So,
yeah.
Looking at that, it's fairly accurate when it comes to how that all played out. Now, my opinion, they're still doing Blue Book. It might be a different name. It might be just under the wraps a little more. But what's your opinion?
Well, exactly. And as a matter of fact, that article from the Department of Defense and the Pentagon in the New York Times confirmed exactly that Project Blue Book itself did not end in 1969, like the government told us it did. And the fact that UFOs were not a national security threat, so they decided that they didn't need to study them any longer. That seems to be not true, given the fact that Harry Reid, this senator, decided to get a bunch of money together for folks in the Pentagon and the Department of Defense to continue that study of these, they call them threats, actually, during their study, aerospace threats potentially. But, in reality, whatever they are, they're still studying them. And I think they haven't even finished that program. They're still obviously doing something behind the scenes.
Oh, and I'm sure. But, on that note, you don't see too much. I mean, I may be wrong because I don't track that too much, but I don't track media. But that's the only current new movie coming out. It seems almost like they slowed down on movies, whereas they used to have, the Independence Day 2, all these movies that came out showing aliens, and it almost seems like they slowed down.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. It's kind of interesting. Matter of fact, the famous Canadian ufologist Grant Cameron says that this is kind of a pattern that happens with disclosure from the government, is that they will throw something out there, leak it out basically, and get the word out of something spectacular, and then shortly thereafter, that they'll do is pull it back. And they'll let it lie there for quite a while before they do anything else. And this might be one of the patterns that we're in right now, where you're right, there is a dearth of information and new movies about aliens or UFOs at this point. Maybe they do that to test the waters, maybe to see how people react on a long-term basis to the information that they are disclosing. And then I think at one point they will actually go and do some more disclosure. And I'm thinking it could happen before December because of the fact that they came out last December with quite a big bombshell. And my feeling has always been that there is some external force or pressure or some kind of concerted effort that they needed to, and still do, need to red pill the public on something that's coming down the road very quickly, I think. We can talk about some of the trends in UFO sightings and those kinds of things later on as well. But it seems to be things are heating up dramatically as far as sighting reports go.
Now, sighting reports are one thing. Entity sightings are another. In the reports you've seen, have there been more or less where an actual entity was seen with a craft?
Generally, I think that they're probably less at this point, as far as I can tell on a daily or monthly basis. But I'll tell you something that just happened today that is very fascinating. I talked with our friend Peter Davenport, at the National UFO Reporting Center. I've been Peter's attorney for the last 24 years. And always have a close relationship to him and the sighting reports that come in from all over the country, literally to the National UFO Reporting Center. Mm-hmm. And actually, he has basically in every tower, FAA tower across the United States, be it private, commercial, or military, they all have a manual. FAA manual that they go through all the procedures that need to be done every day in dealing with air traffic, safety, and various things that happen in our skies. Peter Davenport's National UFO Reporting Center's hotline phone number is in that manual. So you can imagine the calls that he gets in on his hotline, which, by the way, we probably should share out there for anybody who does have a unique sighting. They can always report it to the hotline for the National UFO Reporting Center, which is 206-722-3000. And I'll say that again. We can mention it later, too. It's 206-722-3000. So if people want to report a historic sighting or a brand new sighting, they can do it there. But Peter just today was talking to me on the phone about a sighting that happened last week. That is in Newberg, Oregon, up here in the Pacific Northwest, where a gentleman was driving to work early in the morning. It was about 6:45 a.m. on a 2-lane country highway. And it was light out, of course. It was summertime, so the sun is up much earlier than 6:45, and he's driving along, probably half asleep, heading to work. And on the side of the road, he reports that there are these two very strange, very tall-looking figures walking down the road. And there's no sidewalk on this highway. This is just a country 2-lane highway. So they're walking on the left-hand side of the road while he's driving on the right-hand side. And he describes them as being dressed identically in some kind of a silver tight-fitting outfit with matching green vests on. And he called them calf-high black boots. They're walking along the road. He tried to slow down when he approached them from behind to try to see if he could look and get a look at their faces. And the interesting thing was, simultaneously, as he approached their position and then passed them, they turned their heads away from him together so that he could not see their faces. And Peter says that this gentleman was a very sober witness, seemed to be quite intelligent, and had never seen anything like this in his life. And he reported that to the National UFO Reporting Center just last week in Newberg, Oregon.
So that happened in Oregon.
Yeah.
What was the height of them?
He said that I believe he probably is about 6'3" himself, but he said that they were even taller than he was at 6'3". So you're probably talking either 6'5". I don't know if it was even close to 7 feet, but it kind of brings up the whole idea of the tall whites. That
Right.
Charles Hall has reported out in the Nevada desert in the 70s. So I don't know, but that is just a strange sighting report. And Peter doesn't normally get entity sighting reports. He'll get UFOs from all over the country and all over the world. But this one, he seems to think was a shocker and a kind of a trendsetter. He believes himself that the sightings of UFOs seems to be going through the roof lately. He says that people are either deciding that they want to report them more, or they're seeing things more and reporting them as they see them. He has always stated that the reports that he gets are just a very small percentage of the actual reports that are out there that are being seen, but people just don't even report them.
Well, and I 100% agree with that because, I myself have had 6 sightings and I've never reported any of them. One, because we have our own team, so I don't report them to a national. I just don't think about it because, we investigate them ourselves, so I don't think about reporting them to anybody else.
Yeah.
So a lot of, I can see a lot of people either, one, too scared because they just think they're crazy anyway. I get that all the time, every day. Mm-hmm. You're going to think I'm crazy. No, actually I'm not, but tell me what happened. But the other is, well, it couldn't have been a UFO. It must have been a drone, or it must have been a planet, or it must have been, something else, or so they don't report it. And I do think, is the trend spiking because there's more UFOs out there? It could be, but I honestly think because of the New York article, more people are just coming out talking about it.
Yeah, and I seem to believe that as well, Coop, because the idea that finally the government comes out and mentions that, or confirms actually that UFOs exist, I think a lot of people now are feeling kind of vindicated, this year at least, from 2018 onward, because if the government now is coming forth and saying that these things exist and that they are studying downcraft and the meta materials that these things are made of, I think a lot of folks are actually saying, hey, I told you so. I saw something very unique and strange, and I guess now I can talk about it. They don't have to worry about being disparaged by their friends or kind of thought as being crazy, because the federal government is actually leaking the idea that this is true, and people are studying them.
Well, and I agree, but the sad reality is you still have ridicule. You're always going to have ridicule. You still have a lot of people that, I don't believe it, and you're just crazy. You still have that.
Yeah.
And is it ever going to go away? I honestly don't think so, because I think belief systems play a big part in that. You have too many radicals out. I don't like using the word radical, but yeah, you have too many that are too set in their ways that if it's not of my belief system, then it's, basically if it's not of God, it's of the devil. And, so you have a little sect of those people that are loud, and you're always going to have that.
Yeah. No, you're right. Anything that people do not understand initially is treated with fear and trepidation, and they're always going to be reticent to even go there initially. But now that these things are coming out more in the news, the media, national media, even the mainstream media now, it seems to be not having a problem with reporting on these stories recently. So that's going to be something that will be interesting to see how far they go. I mean, I don't know if you were listening to or reading any of the things that were coming out of the news today, but there was an actual issue about Bigfoot in the Senate race out of Virginia that got involved in this whole political campaign process. We can talk about that as well, but if they're now talking about cryptids and Bigfoot.
You know what? Let's jump over to Bigfoot. So share that with us if you could, because I haven't heard about it.
Oh, you're going to love this one, Coop.
I will.
There is a political race out of the state of Virginia for, I believe it's the Senate, the U.S. Senate. And these two opponents running for the same seat have been at each other's throats throughout the entire campaign. One of the opponents at this point, just today, came out in a newspaper article, in an interview, claiming that his opponent was not only into Bigfoot, but into Bigfoot erotica. And it's
oh my God!
Right in the newspaper article. The reason that he says that, I mean, they say anything they want, but the reason he thinks he can get away with disparaging his opponent in this regard is that the opponent actually admitted that he has written and published 2 books about Bigfoot himself, and that he has an unwritten book that is titled, Bigfoot and the erotica stories, why women enjoy Bigfoot. That was a title that this guy was working on, but he had not published it. But anyway, that is hitting the news big time, mainstream. The fact that people are into Bigfoot, running for office, and now it's either going to go one way or the other. The people are going to go, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that a candidate is believing in Bigfoot." Begin with, and then written 2 books about it, or they're going to go, "Hey, I like that. I like the idea that this guy's thinking out of the box." So we'll see how it works out.
Well, so here's the thing. Here locally, you have 2 sides of the box. You have the ones that believe, because UFOs are heavy here, and so is Bigfoot.
Yes.
I'd say about 6 in 10 people have had a Bigfoot encounter up in these mountains.
Mm-hmm.
So based on that, me personally, I would probably vote for the Bigfoot guy if I had that option.
Yeah.
And you have a large Bigfoot following. So he would probably have a better chance, believing in Bigfoot, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Bigfoot porn, that's a little bit outside the box, but at least he believes in Bigfoot.
Yeah, and let me just make sure that we don't that we do differentiate. It wasn't Bigfoot porn; it was just Bigfoot erotica, whatever that means. I have no idea, but
same animal.
We want to give it the benefit of the doubt there. But it wasn't that long ago when a couple of U.S. presidential candidates admitted that they had seen UFOs.
Right.
Jimmy Carter, of course, and Ronald Reagan. But I remember when Mr. Kucinich mentioned that, and it kind of tubed his ability to go on with the campaign after that. They kind of ridiculed him. But nowadays, I don't know it's making that big of an impact negatively. Matter of fact, Hillary Clinton, when she was running, obviously for this last presidential race, more than once came out and talked about UFOs, and that if she was elected president, she would actually open the files up and let the public know about what was going on. So it almost as if its pendulum is swinging back to the other end, that these ideas that a candidate can be interested in UFOs and Bigfoot and potentially still win the office.
And I'll say it again. I think there's enough people that do believe in the paranormal that they would actually have a good chance. More so with the government coming out talking about UFOs and whatnot. They haven't come out and talked about Bigfoot that I've heard, but there, Washington State's got a law of not killing Bigfoot. That tells you right there that if they can put a law into effect not to kill, to some, a mythical beast, that there's a good chance he exists,
Yes, and there again is another example of soft disclosure, I believe, where a normal state government will actually create legislation to protect a species that hasn't even been proved to exist yet. But
Exactly.
The idea that they're getting the word out and they're kind of preparing the public for the eventuality, I believe, that this and other things will be proven true and potentially in the near future.
Now, getting to yearly trends, I've got to say this has been an exciting year on Bigfoot. One, for all the stories I've heard from witnesses. And, of course, when we had Larry Anderson on the show, we heard a lot more, experiences he had personally.
Yes. Right.
Along with his friend that played the guitar and was gifted by Bigfoot with flowers for playing the guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And personally, I went up with Steve, our drone operator, and we actually saw tracks, and we actually heard Bigfoot knocks, and actually had, the knocks in response to us making a call. So, it was a good year for Bigfoot so far. And real quick, I got to throw this out. As I'm talking, things come to my mind. But August 11th, I will be teaching UFO and alien abduction at the Upriver Farmers Market.
Wonderful.
So if you're in the area and you're locally listening, stop by the Farmers Market at 2:00 in the afternoon. I'll be doing UFO and alien abduction presentation. So.
Well, and we've mentioned many times before that Skagit or Whatcom County up there, where you guys are located, and Skagit County as well, have probably the highest sighting reports of Bigfoot in the entire state, and that even includes the Olympic Peninsula, which is supposedly the hotbed of Bigfoot activity, as well as Vancouver Island. But up in your neck of the woods is exactly where the hot spots are located. Matter of fact, this weekend, tomorrow, I'm going to be with the UFOI team at the Maple Falls Bigfoot Festival. That's starting up there, which will be a lot of fun. The UFOI team shows up because we do investigate other things other than UFOs, most all paranormal activity. Mm-hmm. But we want to hear people's stories. And when we were up there 2 weekends ago for our filming of the investigation we did in Glacier, Washington, we had ourselves a town hall meeting, we call it, where we invite the public to come in and relate to us their stories of sighting reports, UFOs, Bigfoots, all those kinds of things. And we had some very interesting sighting reports of Bigfoot that were just brand new, like within a week before we got there 2 weeks ago. So this is something that's happening right around our own neck of the woods up there.
Oh yeah, and as you said, and as we said on the show before, Skagit County is number one in the state for UFO sightings.
Yes,
and just today, it's funny you mentioned Maple Falls because just today you probably won't meet him, I don't know, but we had a guy that stopped by the booth at the farmers market that was talking. He's going to Maple Falls tomorrow.
Wonderful.
for the Bigfoot Fest. So yeah, and like I said, 6. I'd say, and I don't know if it's an accurate number, but I'd say 6 in 10 people that live up here have had a Bigfoot encounter of some sort. I was talking to a guy today that we were talking about the smell, because he was talking about you can tell that bears have their own smell. You can tell the difference between a bear and Bigfoot. Bigfoot have more of a musky skunk smell. So it's been an exciting and a good year for Bigfoot activity. Obviously for UFOs. What do you see for the rest of the year as far as Bigfoot goes?
Well, I think things are really heating up in that arena as well. As a matter of fact, tomorrow, the same day that we're having the Maple Falls Bigfoot Fest, over in Kingston, they're having their own Bigfoot festival. And Ron Moorhead, the famous Bigfooter researcher, is going to be there at the Kingston UFO Festival. Bigfoot Festival. And some of the UFO I-Team members are going to go up there. We're kind of splitting up. We're covering both Bigfoot festivals tomorrow from two different angles. So, and here's another activity that's going to be coming on at the end of this month in August. Ambition Pictures and the Wade brothers, who run the motion picture studio called Ambition Pictures, is going to they are going to film a documentary called Aliens versus Bros. That's BROS for bros. Up there at Mount Adams, because of the Bigfoot activity that has been cited around Mount Adams as well. We have the UFO I-Team will be there as far as the UFO aspect of the documentary, but we are also going to be tracking Mike Beers, who is a quite famous Bigfoot documentary film producer, and he's going to be there with Ambition Pictures and actually taking them to the habitat areas that Mike has kind of developed over many, many years. I believe he's been Bigfooting for about 40 years himself, and is a good friend of Ron Moorhead, a good friend of Bob Gimlin. And he's actually going to take a group out northwest of Mount Adams to Bigfoot, while the UFO I-Team will be at what they call Takalak Lake, which is on the north side of Mount Adams. And then another group from the Ambition Pictures organization is going to be climbing Mount Adams. So we're going to triangulate with 3 different film cameras and 3 different film crews the simultaneous investigation of UFOs and Bigfoot. And we're going to be in communications with one another with walkie-talkies. That movie, Aliens versus Bros, will probably get a theatrical release coming up sometime in the fall. So hopefully the fall, maybe the winter time. But that's going to be interesting, and that's Bigfooting right around the corner at the end of August.
Oh, that's going to be awesome. I want to check that one out as soon as it's released, or as soon as if you get a copy of it, let me know.
Matter of fact, you can check it out right now. There's a trailer out that you can check out on ambitionpictures.com. You can go there and they've put together a little promo thing on the whole idea of this documentary that they're filming.
Sounds good. Corey, you've been quiet. I want to pull you in. What do you think about projections for UFO sightings in the concrete area?
I think UFO sightings are going to go up. And I don't know if it's necessarily the sightings. I think it's going to be the reports more than anything. that are going to go up, and it's going to go up everywhere. It's not going to be just concrete. It's going to be everywhere. And again, it's going to come down to a lot of the comfort zone of people. As Michael had said, there's so much of this is starting to get out into the news media, the mainstream media, that people are going to start becoming more comfortable with the fact of this being around, and they're going to have a lot less of the, afraid to talk about it because everybody thinks they're crazy kind of thing going on, because, the moment that somebody says, oh, yeah, I think you're kind of nuts, and they can look right at them and say, well, what do you think the news media is doing? I mean, do you think they're all nuts too? That type of thing. So it's, it's one of those where, it's becoming more of a comfortable thing with people, and I'm not going to say that it's comfortable. I'm saying that as a very long shot, out on the edge kind of comfort kind of thing. But it's coming.
They don't feel as crazy.
Exactly. It's coming down to the they don't think that everyone's going to think they're nuts. So there's going to be more reports of what people are already seeing, what people have seen already, and as we get further in and further on down the line, I think more people are going to be looking for the same reasons. They're actually going to be turning their head upwards. If you can get them out of their phones, that is. But they'll be.
And we can hope for we can hope for that.
Well, and yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, you kind of do, because you want people to be informed that here's the reality. These things are here. When we say UFO, it stands for unidentified flying object. We don't know who or what it is. That is the whole point. It's unidentified. So, we don't know if it's something our government's playing with. If we got something coming from, extraterrestrial planets. We don't know what it is. So you're going to have more people, I think, starting to kind of turn an eye to the sky to see what's coming on. And if they do see something, they're going to probably be more apt to report it, just because of everything that's been in the news. As far as the movies backing down, as you had talked about earlier, that goes in waves. I can't say for sure that there's any correlation necessarily. I mean, there probably is to some extent. But, I mean, if you look at movies throughout past, you'll get a chunk of, here's alien movies. And that'll kind of go away. And then another again, a few years later, here's another batch of alien movies. And then it kind of goes away. And then here's another batch of them. And it's kind of just that roller coaster thing going on. So, is there any correlation? Yeah, there could be. I mean, it could be that they're getting out there and people are starting to become more comfortable with it, and it could have something to do with the whole soft disclosure thing that, they're not having as much of them. Or it could just be part of the normal roller coaster of trends in the movie field. So it'll be kind of one of those wait and see. If another year or so down the line we see another batch of 8-10 alien movies, well, we know it was just kind of a trend thing, and there you go.
But what I think I miss is, and Michael can have we seen any documentaries coming out? I mean, other than the ones we just mentioned, but Hangar 1 was a great one. I'm not a big MUFON advocate, but Hangar 1 was actually a decent show. I believe Ancient Aliens is still running. I'm really not sure. I don't track. Like I said, I don't track that. I don't have time to track that. But then you had, UFO Hunters. They got shut down. All the good ones that were actually going somewhere seem to have been shut down, but there's nothing new coming out to replace it, other than the Blue Book files, which is coming out.
Right.
It's disappointing because there's nothing valid coming out.
Yeah. There is seems to be a dearth of factual information on the television about these things, other than like you said, the Ancient Aliens series and those kinds of not documentaries, but kind of educational shows on certain things like this, archaeological finds and those kinds of issues. But that's one of the reasons why we at the UFO I-Team are actually putting together this pitch pilot episode of a group of people going out and investigating UFO hotspots to try to get some kind of a production in gear so people can actually watch how a real investigation should happen, for UFOs. I mean, there's plenty of ghost tours and investigations for spirits and those kinds of things. But the idea that a bunch of highly educated scientific individuals like the UFO I-Team can go out and report on activity in UFO hotspots, I think that would sell. So we're going to give it a shot anyway.
Well, and that's really why S4 doesn't hit on spirits and ghosts and hauntings so much, because there's a plethora of shows out there that, there's 11 billion different shows that people have, podcasts and whatnot. That's all they talk about is spirits and hauntings and let's go to Waverly Hills and things like that. Mm-hmm. So that's overplayed. We all know, there's hauntings everywhere you go. There's spirits everywhere you go. But not many people focus on the UFO, the abductee, and Bigfoot or other cryptids too often.
Yeah. Matter of fact, one of my favorite shows that is no longer on the air was called People of Earth. And it was a comedy spoof of a UFO support group who would sit around and try to help each other through their abduction experiences. And, of course, the aliens on this show that were basically the people that were doing the abductions were just hilarious as far as their characters go. But I thought that the subject matter that they talked about was quite serious, the idea being that people who have experienced unknown things happening to them and have these potentially screen memories of something unique happening and missing time reports and those kinds of things, needed to get together and talk about their problems so they can get through the post-traumatic stress. And I was sad to see that show not get picked up for the next season.
Something I was thinking about here was the other good shows that you talked about. So the ones that seemed like they did some really good, solid investigating in the UFO field, that seemed like they kind of got shut down and stuff. I think they were probably getting too close to the finish line too quickly.
Yeah.
And I think that may have been the problem, and that's why they got shut down so fast. Because it seems like, like we talk about, there's a continued soft disclosure thing that we're going on, and it seems like it's just kind of nice, easy, slow process that they're just kind of working everybody into it. So, if you got somebody who's trying to blow what you've got going out of the water, you want to shut them down. So if you've got this soft disclosure thing going on, you're trying to bring this all in at a nice, easy pace. Especially if you're looking at it from the government's perspective, where pretty much everybody's going to sue the crap out of them the moment that they say, "Oh yeah, there's UFOs, and yeah, they've been abducting people, and we knew about it," and yeah. So they're not in a big hurry for that. I guarantee it. So, it's one of those things where I think you had these shows that were they were getting too close to that finish line of disclosure. So pretty much what happened was that, whoever is, we don't know who it is really that's in charge of that whole mess there, but whoever was heading that up said, you know what, they're getting there a little too quickly, they got to go. That's kind of the thing.
Yeah.
So that's my theory.
So what do we think of Tim Doyle? I still get emails from, I can't remember his organization. But do you think Tim Doyle is still a thing? Or do you think Tim Doyle is just grasping for straws by sending out emails and trying to still pull people in? Not Tim Doyle, I'm sorry. Tom DeLonge. There we go.
Oh, yeah. Tom DeLonge. That is an interesting story, Tom DeLonge. My goodness, this guy had actually pulled together quite a prestigious team of ex-government officials and employees that were high up in the intelligence field and in the military, and even folks like Russell Targ. My goodness, the grandfather of remote viewing, and the gentleman that put together the Army's program to try to train psychic spies. He was even on the team there with Tom DeLonge. And then, of course, they had one of their spokesmen, Luis Elizondo, from the Pentagon, actually coming out, and he was the one who supposedly leaked or somehow got a hold of this gun camera footage of the Tic Tac UFOs and was able to get that released by the Tom DeLonge organization. To the Stars Academy is what it's called. And they came on so strong. Matter of fact, that was in October of last year when they actually, in Seattle, by the way, made their historic announcement that To the Stars Academy was being formed by these retired, just newly retired officers and highly ranked intelligence folks, and the fact that they were going to solicit funds and try to build a spaceship, that could do what they saw these other things do. Then it kind of fizzled out towards the it didn't last more than maybe a couple months when then the New York Times article came out in December, and that was a big brouhaha at that point, and people were wondering when was the next announcement going to hit, and it has not hit yet. So it kind of begs the question of what are they waiting for, and what's going to happen next when they actually do make an announcement.
But I guess my question though is, he had all these highfalutin, military and government and Pentagon, all these people, but they didn't go anywhere.
You know what? He didn't have that. Tom DeLonge is for lack of a better word, a patsy. the same group of people, whoever it may be, that was making sure that the good shows and stuff that were getting a little too close to the truth too quickly didn't stick around, are the same ones that set him up with everybody that was on that team. You can't tell me for a second, okay? I'm pretty open-minded about most stuff, but you put two and two together and you really look at this saying, that came together way too easy. You can't tell me that somebody else wasn't behind that with a hand going, you, all go over here on this team. And we're going to make it look like he pulled this together, and then we're going to make it look like he's a little bit nutty and, on this other show, and then it's just kind of fizzle out, and then we're going to go to our next step. Tom DeLonge was a rock star, somebody that they could easily put out there as a face front for a minute, and control. And that's pretty much what it was, is that he was that patsy. They put everything together for him. It all came together. He did this thing, made this big thing, and then it just fizzled out, especially when he started looking a little goofy. And then, of course, just like Michael said, then we have the newspaper articles that come out not long after. And now we're waiting for that other shoe to drop. But, as far as Tom DeLonge goes, I don't see that really coming back up again. I just don't.
He needs to go back to Blink 182.
Yeah, that was a one and done. That was a one and done right there. There's nothing else going to come of that, I don't think. I mean, he's still going to be discussed amongst us that are on the shows because everybody wants to, go, well, what the hell happened there, But, and again, this is just my opinion, but I have a strong opinion on this one. I think he was just that patsy. That's all he was.
So I gotta bring it up though, patsy or not, Do you think disclosure would have happened had he not stepped up and started talking?
Yeah, I do. I think they'd have found somebody else. If it hadn't been him, it'd have been somebody else. He was just the guy that fit the bill at the time. You know, we've had others in the past that were like that. You know, they've had other people in the past that were those patsies that fit the bill at the time, and then they discredit him or something else. So yeah, I think it would have happened either way. It would have. They just might have had to look a few minutes longer to find another guy who fit close enough.
Yeah, and you know the whole idea could fit into that program of you know, throwing something out there. Matter of fact, I kind of call it spaghetti disclosure, where they actually throw something against the wall, see if it sticks, and of course, if it doesn't stick, fine. But if it does stick, you know what they do is they throw up a whole lot of disinformation sauce with it, so that they can have plausible deniability. And then, of course, what they do is they just kind of pull it back. They throw it out there, kind of make a big splash, then they pull it back and they kind of lay low for a while. Maybe studying how society changes when they do those kinds of things. I would imagine there's got to be a major mind control and you know, study about how these things are actually going to affect the human population when the paradigm shift actually hits. You know, at one point we have to all consider for our own selves, what would we do the very next day after the actual full disclosure happens? If indeed there are aliens, you know, if indeed they are visiting the Earth and potentially even abducting individuals on the planet, and there's nothing we can do to stop them, you know, how is that going to affect us on a daily basis when we have to go to work the next day, when we go to church on Sunday?
It's not going to affect us other than we got to brace ourselves for an influx of people asking for help. Just
Exactly.
for paranormal, you know, specifically. Is it going to affect us? No, because we already know they're here.
Right.
We already know there's abductees. We already, you know, we're already, I guess, in the know, in a way. We don't know everything, no, but we know enough that, you know, when the disclosure happens, everyone's going, "Oh my God, they're really here." We're going to go, "Yep, we knew. You should have listened."
And
I think the question goes a little further than that, actually, too. I think the question goes to the fact is, what is society going to do in a whole? And, you know, I think there's going to be a few things that happen there in that. One of them is that the people who, like us, who have been studying it, who have been tracking it, who have been getting reports of it, we're all going to go, "See, I told you." You know. And then there's going to be, I'm sorry, but the religious right of that is going to lose their mind because pretty much everything they've ever been taught is just going to go right out the window. And then there's going to be those that are just going to be, you know, kind of more of accepting of it. They're going to go, "Yeah, I kind of thought something like that might be around." And guess it was. And I guess probably one other one is going to be the ones that were the abductees. And those are the ones that are going to be going, looking at the government going, "I am so going to sue you and I'm going to be rich now. You bastards."
Yes.
You know, so that's kind of going to be, you know, on a whole, the four different reactions, I think.
Well, you're going to have, and I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, but you're going to have, you mentioned the religious right. You're going to have two types of those. You're going to have the ones that believe it in their religion, and they're going to go, "Oh my God, religion's not right." And then you're going to have the other ones that are going to be so wrapped up in their belief that they're not really aliens, the demons are here. And those are the two types of the religious side you're going to have. And they will lose their minds because, you know, then, "Oh my God, the devil's coming to take the earth." And that is what they're taught. And then you're going to have the pulpit pounders that are going to go, yes, the demons, they're not aliens, they're demons. And, those are the two types. The ones that they have a belief system, but they're not so wrapped up that they can open their minds and go, they were lying to me. Yeah. And, so there's two types you're going to have to deal with. Anyway, we're at the top of the hour, folks. Corey, go ahead and take us into a break. When we come back, we'll carry on this conversation, and we have a couple other topics to bring up.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, when we come back from break, we're going to continue our open topics discussion. Tonight on our panel, we have got Michael Hall, the paranormal lawyer and owner of UFO I-Team, myself, Corey Reese, and Eric Cooper of Forest Moon Paranormal. Join us every Saturday night at midnight Pacific Standard Time. You can find us on Spreaker.com and The Fringe FM. And for local listeners, you can catch our shows on KSVU 90.1 on your FM dial on Saturdays from 10 p.m. to midnight. Please go to thefringe.fm and check out show lineup with shows like Lighting the Void with Joe Roop and The Paranormal Code with Richie Giordano, and a plethora of other good shows. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be right back.
This is Joe Roop from Lighting the Void, and you're listening to KTLK Digital Broadcasting Station, The Fringe FM.
Hi, folks. CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. There's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com.
Select Joe Roop at checkout at AncientLifeOil.com.
This is Rev Dan Lopez from Spiritual Warrior Today Radio, and you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Who were the real ancient Egyptians? What is it about ancient Egypt that captivates us all? The critically acclaimed series Magical Egypt is back with all new episodes. Let Chance Gardner and company take you on another adventure through Magical Egypt in the new series Magical Egypt 2. Magical Egypt 2 attempts a forensic reconstruction of the science of the ancients through a study of ancient aesthetics. Also, the best researchers and authors in the field like John Anthony West, Graham Hancock, Laird Scranton, Robert Bouval, Lon Duquette, Aaron Sheik, and more join together to explore the topics of the esoteric and the hidden messages of the ancient Egyptians. Just go to magicalegypt.com right now and put in the code word FRINGE and get 10% off any download or order, including the groundbreaking original Magical Egypt series, as well as the new episodes in Magical Egypt 2. Also, check out the great work and the companion series at magicalegypt.com. Click the banner on the Fringe FM or go to magicalegypt.com and use the code word FRINGE and get 10% off your order today while it lasts. You asked for it. We listened. Changes are coming to the Fringe FM. Hear the Paranormal Code with Rich Giordano live Monday through Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, starting July 9th.
July 9th, we're going to be going 4 nights a week on the Fringe FM.
Followed by Lighting the Void with me, Joe Roop, live at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. Then, stay up with us in the early morning hours for some of the best paranormal and alternative programming around. The truth is out there, and so are we. The Fringe FM.
Ew, yuck. They're unhealthy. Bugs. I hate bugs. Our home is clean, but occasionally bugs show up. Well, I found something that is tougher than bugs. Orange Guard. From contact, it kills bugs. Plus, Orange Guard kills hidden bugs and keeps new bugs away for weeks. The ingredients in Orange Guard are on the FDA generally regarded as safe list, so Orange Guard may be used around food, humans, and pets. It comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Orange Guard. Available at orangeguard.com and Ace Hardware.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
This is Preston Dennett, from PrestonDennett.weebly.com, and you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
My name is David. I suffered from MS, or multiple sclerosis symptoms, since 1986. For years, doctors tried to help, but didn't give me any real hope. I tried almost everything. I was afraid this was my future, but I did not give up hope. 8 years ago, a healthcare worker told me about RegeneStem. I called RegeneStem. RegeneStem explained how stem cells worked. No promises, just a simple explanation of the science. They treated me with respect and understood my journey. For the first time, I felt hope. Now I can jog and snow ski once again. It's been amazing. I have been symptom-free of multiple sclerosis for 8 years. I have learned that stem cell therapy has a broad range of medical therapy, from COPD to chronic pain and diabetic neuropathy. It's an amazing therapy. If you want to talk about your chronic pain or your chronic symptoms, call RegeneStem today.
Call 305-224-1858. That's 305-224-1858. 305-224-1858.
Welcome back to S4 Radio.
Welcome back. And for those of you just joining us tonight, we are having an open topic discussion on our panel. Tonight we have Michael Hall, myself, Corey Reese, and Eric Cooper. Welcome back, everybody.
Where are you at, Michael?
I'm here. I'm just having a great time.
Good.
All right.
So, you know, we're halfway through the year, what kind of other paranormal stuff do you guys do on the UFOI team, Michael?
Well, I tell you, we've up in this last filming that we did, the investigation in Glacier, Washington, we investigated some interesting orb activity. That's ORB, and those are basically, if you want to call them, unidentified flying objects, but they don't necessarily fly. They just kind of float around in some cases. So we did that kind of investigation. There were, other than, UFO craft, we have had a lot of orange fireballs being reported lately in the news and in our investigations as well. So we have got those things that we're investigating as far as, are these things connected to the Lynaid meteor showers? Are they falling stars that come too close and look a lot larger than they really are? So those are fascinating subjects as well as Bigfoot. We're all interested in the cryptid idea of Bigfoot and Dogman and chupacabras. Those kinds of issues are always standard fare for people that are interested. And some of the UFOI team has even gotten into the whole fairy lore, the mystery of the Fae, and elementals.
Let's talk about that for a second, because we always we actually deal with fairy cases on occasion, and they do seem to be on the rise.
Mm-hmm.
And let me clarify. Fae is an umbrella. Fairies are one part of the Fae. Fae include dryads, which are tree spirits. They include elementals. And of course, Keith argues on the elemental side, there are two types of elementals. There is one race that is ancient that kind of falls under the off-world side, but then there are the elementals that are guardians of the elements. So, and they're a part of the Fae realm. Now, why would they be upset? Because that's kind of what you see is an upset of the Fae realm. And so in the cases we've encountered, it's been a case of sometimes landscaping has been done, disturbed a certain tree, disturbed a certain part of the land. In other cases, it's kind of unknown, but they're there, and we had to kind of make an agreement with them. But why would the Fae be upset? I see part of it as planetary change. I see part of it as overlogging in some cases, destruction of the environment. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I believe that there is an entire, from what some of the intuitive members of the UFO I-Team have said, is that the Earth itself is going through a major, not only electromagnetic change, but the heat of the Earth is heating up, as you can tell with all the volcanoes that have been in the news lately, that something is going on in the core of the planet that seems to be affecting the surface. Maybe they are, the Fae, reacting to these Earth changes that are happening right before our very eyes. And basically they are having to deal with it just like everyone else, but they have to be a little bit more, they are a little bit more subtle than we are, and have to probably deal with it on a mightier basis if it's affecting their environment and their ability to survive.
And you bring that up. I was talking to a former firefighter today at the farmer's market, and apparently there is a fire going on in Alaska right now that is actually that they can't get it put out because it's burning on the permafrost, which is releasing methane, which is, causing a hotter fire. Not sure if you've heard of that one.
Wow, I have not heard of that, but I can imagine the science behind that would be horrendous. Obviously, to start burning permafrost, that's quite an amazing fuel right there.
Right. And so, the firefighters are having a hard time getting that one put out because of, like you said, the nature of it. And maybe somebody can find a link and put that up in the chat room for the fire going on in Alaska right now. But, and are these caused by human error? Are they caused by carelessness? It's a known fact that humans are destroying their own environment. So in some of those cases, yeah. I was always on the thought that, we've done more damage to this planet in the last 100 years. Part of that's based on technology, the Industrial Revolution, factories, corporations that just are out of control due to lack of regulation, things of that nature. I never thought humans could be destructive enough to destroy a planet, but I almost think we are.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and
there it is. AlaskaFireInfo.com. It's akfireinfo.com. Markham found it and put it into the chat room. So for the listeners, it is akfireinfo.com. That's the fire going on in Alaska right now. And that's,
wow.
You think about it, that's where the poles are, or, the North Pole is.
Yeah.
And, you talk about an earth shift, something like that, melting ice, getting into the permafrost. That's, and it's out of control. They can't get it put out.
Well, and just think of this as well. I mean, permafrost is basically that. It's frost that's permanent. And just think what is trapped within the permafrost. Let it be minerals or vapor or all sorts of interesting things that are now being burnt and put up into the atmosphere of the Earth. Let alone the fact that that it's going to go around the Earth a few times and probably affect how much sunlight we are going to absorb. But who knows what those, it's like those old ice cores that they've got from Antarctica, and they found, biological material and certain, antigens that are thousands of years old, and they're releasing them into the atmosphere by bringing them up. Who knows what's going on underneath that permafrost?
Oh yeah, and all the artifacts and all the if there were dinosaur bones, if there was a Native American anything, it's all destroyed. It's not to mention the environmental impact.
And when it comes down to just normal forest fires, I hadn't thought of it until you brought it up. But can you imagine what the overall Fae community, elementals, and all those things are dealing with if indeed a forest fire wipes out their entire ecosystem? It's not like they could probably just flee to any other place. They've probably had those grounds and those places as a home base for who knows how long. That would be an interesting subject, not let alone the animals and the supposed Bigfoots that have been destroyed in forest fires. Just think of the elementals as well.
Well, and me personally, I almost think Bigfoot is a part of the elemental realm, in a sense. I think Bigfoot's a guardian of the forest realm. So, yeah, and it's a known fact. The Bigfoot here, you don't hear too many cases where Bigfoot attack. You hear about it in the South, and that's the swamp ape. Until you get the individual that, one, disrespected the environment or disrespected Bigfoot's space, then you hear about, a more angry, threw a log through a window, threw a rock at him, and warning until they disregarded the warning, and then you got an angry Bigfoot. But people throw the cigarette butts out the window. We're in drought right now, and there you go. You have a fire. People ignore burn ban. They set up a campfire and it gets out of control because the wind comes through. It's human stupidity that sets half the fires. The other half is usually a lightning strike.
Yeah, and I just thought of something else when you were talking about, Bigfoot being a part of the elementals and the Fae itself. I heard the stories that when Mount St. Helens blew, that they actually recovered some Bigfoot bodies. The government did, because of the blast, just wiped everything out within how many miles of the mountain, and would have suffocated all the animals in that area, including Bigfoot. So, the whole idea that even the natural disasters of the world, forest fires and those kinds of things, affect a lot more life and biological entities than we even think, let alone whether there is a Fae community out there that the fairies have to live somewhere, and the elementals, the trolls, the all sorts of gnomes or whatever. I wonder if they have any kind of statistics, the people that study these things, on how those different kinds of races of biological entities survive natural disasters like that.
Well, and talking about the case in 82 with Mount St. Helens, it was 81 or 82. I'm wanting to say 82. But there were actually 2 living Bigfoot that they recovered.
Interesting.
They took them to Fort Lewis, and then they shipped them off there. There's a research center in California that the government uses where they're supposed to take Bigfoot cases and whatnot. So I believe they took the 2 living Bigfoot to Fort Lewis. Probably took care of them medically, whatever the case, and then they shipped them off to California. Now, what happened to them? Who knows?
Yeah,
I was on a Bigfoot site. I think it was last year. When I was doing some research on that case, and there was I believe he is part of the National Guard reserves, and he came out and was talking about it. Now, was it true? I have no idea. There's no validation because the guy couldn't be found.
Yep. Yeah, I've heard of military stories as well, running across Bigfoot in the Midwest in maneuvers that they were doing out there, trying to eradicate some marijuana farms, informal marijuana farms out there in the Midwest, and run across Bigfoot as well. It's fascinating to know that the government or branches of the government probably know all about the whole idea of cryptids and have been keeping it under wraps for this period of time. And, you wonder if this soft disclosure is happening, whether that might be the next part of it, that, they're talking about UFOs. They haven't talked about aliens yet, but maybe it's safer for them now to come out about the existence of Bigfoot. Or any other kind of cryptid. That might be the next thing that they need to do to raise people's consciousness to the effects of, the reality of the universe and our own planet.
Why wouldn't I have a couple answers possibly for that, but why wouldn't the government want to disclose Bigfoot? Again, would it come down to evolution, or do you think it would? I think it just jogged my memory too. Francie, our therapist in Forest Moon, she's in Idaho, and she actually sent me a picture in a national forest that warns you of Bigfoot. Bigfoot sightings are up here. Beware of Bigfoot and whatnot.
Wow.
And it was a national forestry sign. That kind of struck me as odd because you got a government agency that's actually putting Bigfoot warning signs up in the national forest. But why wouldn't the government want to disclose? Are they scared that people won't want to go to the national forests? Or would it be a draw and they don't want people to shoot Bigfoot?
Mm-hmm. That's a good analogy right there. Probably it's a little bit of both. I would imagine that would be quite a chilling effect on the revenue that the national and state parks would get each year if people were indeed afraid to go venture out into the campgrounds that are maintained and developed there for our recreational pleasure. There's a lot of there's a big budget for the National Forest Service and those kinds of recreational activities. So that's one thing that I'm sure that they would not want to publicize. Matter of fact, there is an interesting aspect to this as well, because I'm sure your own drone pilot knows this, but the UFO I-Team's drone pilot, Lee Strauss, has informed us that, to get his FAA license to fly a drone commercially, he has to be versed with the various restricted airspaces that you can fly a drone in. And one of the major ones around the United States is federal and state parks. You cannot fly a drone in those restricted areas. So you wonder why they are protecting that so fiercely. And then when you put on top of that David Paulides' 411 Missing book series, where
Right.
so many people are missing in state and federal parks without a trace, you wonder how that correlates to the Bigfoot sightings in the area, and or the possibility that the alien abduction experience is going on federal land as well.
Well, and Markham brings up a good point. Probably have to shut the park down and lose revenue due to the Endangered Species Act and all the red tape that would entail. And that's a very good point.
Yes.
And it's also, he says, I think it's because they would have to extend protection. And if they are human, then rights, etc. And, those are also valid points. Now, Steve does have his FAA license for drone. And other than flying around dams for security, he hasn't had any problem flying in national forests. Not yet. So,
yeah. All right.
And of course that's up here because he flies up here.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to shift gears because there's so Forest Moon Paranormal's headquarters group is Forest Moon Grove, and it's a legal pagan church. And we're talking trends this year. And for our listeners, if anyone that hasn't heard, Jeff Sessions of the what's his title? He's in charge of the criminal justice system, and they've implemented a religious liberty task force. Now, he actually came out in a video also and said everyone's going to say Merry Christmas. Do you really think religion belongs in government?
Well, no, that's exactly what the First Amendment says. That the Constitution says that the Congress and the government shall make no laws respecting religion. That was one of the major, founding principles of our country. So I can imagine that. It's possible that this religious task force on religious freedom would maybe be there to enforce the First Amendment. I don't know. But it seems a little interesting and suspicious that they would even need a task force like that, given the fact that we do have a Constitution.
Well, and they brought up the fact that their whole thing is the baker that refused to make a cake for a same-sex marriage.
Yeah.
My opinion of that is if you've got a business, your religion should take a back seat. That you've got a public business, there should have been no problem baking a cake.
Right.
And so we're reactivating our church because I see a whole lot of discrimination coming out of this task force because it's going to be one-sided. The minute he came out and said everyone's going to say Merry Christmas instead of Happy Holidays or Blessed Yule or whatever your religion is, he's already going the one-sided route, which is a threat to anyone non-Christian. So I see a downward trend this year based on that. Our government is going one-sided. What's your thoughts, Corey?
We're going to end up having to get human rights groups involved to have a serious, massive lawsuit against the government for violating constitutional rights against Americans for freedom of religion. Because the bottom line of it is that as much as people don't like it or whatever they do or don't like it, I really don't care. The Constitution says right in it that we have the freedom to practice whatever religion we so choose. You can't have just one-sided thing. Mostly, and people don't like to hear this, but it's the truth, mostly the Christian right that wants to push that on everybody else and say that that's the only one and that everybody else is wrong and we can't practice it. No, we can, and we can under our constitutional rights. Sorry about your luck.
Hey, I completely agree. And let me scroll down because, Joe brought up his 2 cents was I don't think he was mandating a religion on anybody. I think he was just saying political correctness can kiss his butt. Well, I would agree other than his statement of everybody's going to say Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas is one religion. What's wrong with saying Happy Holidays? That is a very generic, it's the holidays. And it was one religion that all raised up and said, oh, no, we can't do that. That discriminates against us. Well, what about everyone that's non-Christian? That discriminates against everybody else. So, no, you know what? It's going to be interesting to see how it turns out. Either way, we are going to stand up and do our thing. And it's not going to discriminate against anybody because we do it on private property, and it's only for the pagans that want to come out and do it. We don't proselytize. We don't go to your door and say, hey, you want to be pagan? No, we don't believe in that crap. If you're not our belief, then you don't have to be our belief. But what I do see, and I see a very bad trend because one of the missions that we have in our organization is support for military personnel that are our belief. And I've seen a lot of them going back into the closet, essentially, because of discrimination. I faced intense discrimination when I ran our group in Iraq, both tours. Because, well, if you're not Christian, you can't practice. Well, BS. You've got your belief, I've got mine. Don't push yours on mine. We have no issues.
I've got some things I want to put out here, and people are not going to like it, and I really don't care. The first thing I want to address is that it's not the fact that Jeff Sessions offended somebody. It's the fact that Jeff Sessions is possibly looking at constitutionally violating people's rights. There's a difference. It's one thing to be offended. It's one thing to break. It's another to break the law. We're talking about breaking the law here, not offending somebody. So I want to make sure that that's clear to start with. Because in all honesty, I really don't care who practices what. Just don't push it on each other. That's all I give a crap about. And another thing that I want to put out there is, look, I'm about to state some things that if it does not apply to you, don't take offense to it. But it does apply to some. And the fact of it is that I am really, really, really tired of Christian right saying that everything that they have is right and everything that we have is wrong. No. It's just my religion. It's not yours, and I don't care. Take yours, go have fun. But don't tell me that I have to do something because your religion says I have to. Okay? That's my thing. And the fact of the matter is, I find it very... What's the word I'm looking for here? I find it ridiculous, I guess, is one word that I could say, that the one group, one of the largest groups, of course, that their religion says don't judge others, is the ones who judge the most. It's just, it's sad. And again, if you're part of that religious group and you don't do that, that means that didn't apply to you. So please don't take offense to it. I am stating that to those who it does apply to.
Yes, well said. And also, the whole idea that if indeed there is going to be some kind of disclosure that affects the paradigm shift of all of these religions and or all of these non-religions. Let's not forget the atheists, who have no religion at all that they want to adhere to, let alone pagan religion. The idea that the paradigm shift could change everything in at least some aspects, each religion will have to determine how they're going to react to potentially earth-shaking knowledge of some kind of information we've never had before. That's going to be fascinating for the future as well.
And I only brought that up because why do we even need one? Why do you even need a religious liberty task force?
Right.
Live and let live. Bottom line. If they feel the need, they have to bring it up, then what the hell? There shouldn't even be a need for one, other than some feel they need to push their morals or their religious beliefs on everybody else. That's where my issue is. We don't push nothing on nobody. So why should I have to deal with you pushing your crap on me? And anyway, moving along.
I think
that one makes me a little testy. Sorry.
Oh, me too. Because I put it out in the community group, one post that our organization is reforming, and it was geared towards those that are of our belief. And oh my God, the responses I get are nothing but hatred. And why are you pushing paganism on us? Well, I wasn't. It was one post that was geared for our belief that there is something for you in the community now. And for a non-biased community, as they seem to think they are, they're a very biased community. Because I run the community group. I approve the posts for, we're having Vacation Bible School Ice Cream Social. Okay, great. I approve those posts. I approve all the other religious posts. I put one post, and oh my God, I'm pushing pagan propaganda. No, actually, I wasn't. And I never have. And, it changed my whole attitude. It changed my whole perception of this community, for one. And you know what? I thought we lived in a country where we could actually have our own beliefs, and apparently not. Apparently not.
Not so much for a free country, right?
Yeah. And we've got a friend. She's been with Forest Moon since 2005, and they actually moved to Ecuador. I was surprised by that because I just found that out 2 days ago. And she basically told me the other day that anybody that wants to move to Ecuador, Ecuador has opened their arms to, and we're considered refugees over there because of all the people that wanted to get away from Trump. And there were actually people still there that wanted to get away from Obama when Obama was there. And they're staying there until Trump is done making America great again. And once he's done, they'll see if America's great again, and then they'll come back. If America's not great again, which it's not and never will be, then they'll stay in Ecuador because you can live there for $800 a month. So they're like, wow, got my wheels turning. But no, I'm not moving to Ecuador. I will stay right here. But she's the first one I've actually met that moved out of the country because of Trump. You hear about it, but she's the first one. Do you guys know anyone that's moved out of the country?
Not personally.
No, not here either.
I mean, you hear all these people talking about it. Oh my God, I can't live with him. I'm moving.
Right.
But it's talk, and it's interesting, and they're loving it there. 80% of Ecuador has to be Ecuadorian to work. So if you move there, you can't be employed. You have to be self-sustaining with at least a minimum of $800 a month. That is their law, I guess you could say, to approve people to move there. But it was interesting.
Yes, and I've heard other countries are doing the same. Costa Rica, those kinds of places supposedly are wonderful places to move if you're an expat. There are communities out there that, just like any other large metropolis, some social and groups move together, and you've got a lot of Americans living together out there, I understand.
Well, yeah, I'm not here to Trump bash. I'm not here to, that's why we don't talk politics in here too much, because it riles up the chat room, and I know it's going to rile up the community when it's aired on KSVU, but that's okay. Sometimes riling needs to be done. But, and I wish Keith was here, because we could talk a little more of the in-depth alien predictions. Mm-hmm. But what do you think about abductions? Do you think abductions are on the rise? I had a really interesting conversation with a guy at the market today that he hasn't heard of a UFO sighting since 1994. And I told him, really? Oh, UFO sightings and abductions, they happen daily now.
Yeah.
So I know you deal mostly with UFO reports, but what do you think about abductions? Do you think abductions are on the rise, or do you think there's 16 races that we know documented that are abducting? Some for and I've said this many times on the show, but some for science, some for social science, some are unknown. But do you think public perception is changing that a little bit?
Well, I don't know that public, is changing it with their own way they look at things. I think maybe the dramatic initial things that we heard reports about, the Barney and Betty Hill abduction in 1963, the Allagash group that was abducted, and even the Roswell, New Mexico crash in '47, when they supposedly recovered some body parts on one of the craft that was there, either the Aztec one or the Roswell one. Those kinds of things were very dramatic at the time and hit the news big time and went around the world. Nowadays, I think that there is a very difficult time for people to come out and try to get into the mainstream media with a story of an abduction. But let me just tell you, from my research on the UFO I-Team and various scientific consultants that we deal with, I'm hearing of abduction scenarios and missing time as much now as I ever have in the historical past. So I think it's happening probably more often to a wider range of individuals that don't necessarily either know about it or don't want to report it themselves, and or potentially whatever alien race is doing this, if it's even quite a few of them, have obviously gotten probably a lot more sophisticated in their approach to this alien abduction scenario, where they can probably do it without any kind of a screen memory nowadays, or any kind of an opportunity for someone to understand that they might have missing time. We are, the UFO I-Team, in September, scheduled to go to Whidbey Island, right here in the state of Washington, and investigate two separate families of at least 5 people each in their family who claim that they have missing time of about 2 hours after they sighted a UFO quite close in proximity at the same time. These families basically were in two different areas, probably 5-10 miles apart at the most, and saw the same craft at the same time, they believe. And for some reason, both of them have experienced some missing time. There could be an abduction case scenario, so we're going to follow up on that. And this happened just 2 years ago.
Yeah, can you pull us into that one with you?
Oh, wouldn't that be great? Yeah, definitely.
Well, any abduction case, I definitely want to, if you don't mind, go with you guys and bring the team.
That would be wonderful to get you guys' perspective and input on our investigation in this regard. We're going to actually meet with the family members who are claiming these experiences, including the missing time.
Sounds good, yeah, because any abduction case I'm always in. Because here's my other part with this is so we have UFO disclosure. Do you think abduction disclosure is going to go with that? Because they are two different topics. You're talking people that are getting taken by beings from these UFOs. But do you think the government's going to come out and include abduction with UFO disclosure?
You almost have to.
Not really.
Well, that's going to be the fear, I think, and that's probably why they didn't take that extra step upon confirming that UFOs exist. They said nothing about whether aliens exist and are flying the craft. But obviously someone's flying these craft. If they do exist, they're probably not just drones from some other part of the universe. So I think that is going to be their major fear, that once they have to tip that domino over, there's going to be, like Corey says, a whole lot of folks really upset with what's going on. Not only the fact of abductions, but let's think of it this way. If indeed these craft are being piloted by aliens who are able to get here from other places around the universe, obviously they're well advanced more than we are. They've got propulsion systems that are outrageous and probably have medical cures that we could have benefited from for the last 70 years or so. And when it comes down to the fact that maybe good old Aunt Martha might not have had to die of cancer, and all of a sudden the government realizes that the public knows that because of the disclosure, there's going to be a whole heck of a lot of people that are going to be upset. Lawsuits, of course, but even more than that, the whole idea that who are they going to trust after that if they can't trust their own government?
Well, exactly. And then you bring up, you didn't even touch on the energy factor. That we could have been getting away from POL products based on the free energy aspect of these craft. All the money you put into gas and oil, and when the governments have this technology to fly on, maybe in some cases an unknown element 116, or we didn't have to have pay power bills off a power grid because the extraterrestrials have a different technology. So you have a whole lot of factors, and that may be the abduction side, may be why the government's been so lax on UFO disclosure, along with the fact that they don't like telling the public that we don't have control of our skies, because there's been cases where they've come down and shut down missile silos,
right?
And things of that nature. So when you have to tell the public that we don't really have control of the country, our airspace, that kind of takes the trust, I have to watch the skies because there's something there that the government can't control. Aspect there.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It is going to be a major paradigm shift, like the Brookings report mentioned back in the 60s even, that the public really cannot handle this truth at this point. We're going to have to make sure that they get a handle on the whole idea of the extraterrestrial presence on the planet. And who knows how far we've actually come since the 1960s, and whether we actually could handle some of those interesting and shocking truths that are out there, possibly.
Now, getting to Bigfoot again. So I always like to correlate Bigfoot with UFOs because I've heard, different reports. I've heard reports of Bigfoot running away from UFOs. I've heard reports of Bigfoot coming out of a landed craft and collecting samples. And we've talked about this once on the show. That is it possible Bigfoot's being abducted too?
That would be an interesting subject, wouldn't it? The idea that, well, here's the deal. If we have more than one race visiting this planet with scientific and or biological interests, you would think that if Bigfoot exists in our ecosystem, they would want to sample Bigfoots as well. Yeah, and then, of course, even if they are connected with one other race of aliens and they are working with or part of some, extraterrestrial, group of people, that doesn't mean that the other folks out there that are potentially visiting the planet wouldn't be interested in them as well. So I think that's a fascinating point of view to take. You got to keep the open mind on all that stuff.
Well, there's probably a lot of things on this planet that are being abducted for research. We're just the most sentient that can say something about it. They've probably done something very similar to what we do on our own planet. They've probably taken samples of every animal and bug and everything else there is on this planet to, investigate it for the scientific purposes, just like they do to us. So, the possibility of Bigfoot being on a UFO or leaving a UFO or whatever is very possible. They could be taking them to take a look at them as well, because I tell you what, they're a lot more interesting creature than we are.
And if you look at the DNA aspect, because it's been documented that a lot of abductees, if they talk to their parents, if they talk to the grandparents, the abductions have been going on generational. So if you look at the aspect of at least one race that's taking abductees for the DNA sample, that they wouldn't be taking a Bigfoot for the same thing, for a DNA sample. And if anybody would know about, the DNA aspect of biological creatures on this planet, it would be the aliens, because the aliens are doing the samples. Are they divulging their information? No, not even a little bit. But it's in this field, you always have to think outside the box, and that's just one aspect I've always, of recent, been thinking is, it would explain why you have the cases where Bigfoot runs terrified when they see a UFO coming across, especially where we're at, because, Bigfoot and UFO being the two top of the state. I mean, we're tied with Grays Harbor County for Bigfoot, which is the Olympic Peninsula, which has a lot of Bigfoot sightings. How are they as far as, do we get a lot of UFO reports coming from the Olympic Peninsula as well?
Well, probably not as many as Skagit County, just because of the population aspect out there on the Olympic Peninsula. But, when it comes to, geographical areas and the amount of population, there's probably still a lot going on out there. It's just that there's not so many reports because there's not that many. It's not that dense of a population in the area. But it is kind of interesting that that's why potentially Bigfoots are out there, in that area, as well as it points to the fact that the Bigfoot can actually survive in density, areas for human beings, and also the unpopulated areas as well.
Mm-hmm. And we're winding down to the end of the show. We have about 6 minutes.
Yeah, you got about 5 minutes.
I know our closing is shorter, so we have to wrap up closer. But it's been a great show. We hit pretty deep in a lot of good topics, and I'm still baffled. Why is this area, and we've talked about this before, but why is this area so hot and heavy with UFO and Bigfoot both, other than the mineral content?
And potentially, as Lee Strauss from our UFO I-Team mentions, he believes there's some kind of a magnetic or magma thing going underneath the Cascades up there in the north that seem to attract UFOs and or potentially the Bigfoot, as far as the magnetic flow underneath the surface of the earth with the magma and those kinds of things on these volcanoes. He thinks that might have something to do with it.
And that's interesting, because what's interesting up here is everyone knows Mount Baker. Mount Baker's an obvious volcano, but we also have Glacier Peak, which ain't that far, and is also a dormant volcano. But actually, going by records, is more deadly than Mount Baker is, based on the flow.
That's what I have heard that as well. Matter of fact, I have heard that the rumblings lately have been fantastic up there just recently.
I haven't seen any reports of rumblings. I think about 6 months ago we had a 2.1 earthquake up in Marble Mount, which was interesting because, Marble Mount is, I don't know of any faults up there other than, we got Baker and Glacier.
Yeah.
Which is one reason I'm heavy into disaster preparation as well. But I mean, you have a volcano that blows, not a whole lot you can do based on how it blows. If it you have to worry about the pyroclastic blast, which would kill you, because you can get away from the lava, you can get away from the lahar, but the pyroclastic blast is what you got to worry about, because it's going to level everything.
And we had a report actually from one of our boots on the ground guys up in Glacier, Washington, that Mount Baker let off a steam plume last week.
Yeah, and when I was a kid back in the 80s, I went. They had a big display on Mount Baker in the Science Center in Seattle, and it's been steaming for years. They got the hot springs up here, and so it's dormant, but it's not. Is it going to blow? Not in my lifetime. I don't see it. There's a lot more threats here that are worse than the volcano at this point in time. Cascadia subduction zone for one. If it goes, it's a 9.0 earthquake. And of course, you got landslides, things of that nature. But and that brings up the good point though with UFOs and the lava stream under the ground. And could it be the UFOs are keeping the volcanoes from blowing? That's always a possibility as well.
There you go. It's very possible. Our videotape of last weekend shows that there are just many unidentified objects flying into and around the mountain of Mount Baker for some reason. It just seems to be concentrated on that area.
And, even as a kid, I always heard about a mothership that was over Baker, but whatever, because I wasn't into UFOs growing up. But, you know, you always see a cloud. Not always, but oftentimes you do see a cloud that just kind of stays around the top of the mountain. It's not a steam plume. It's a cloud. And, you know, I've told folks since last year that, you know, watch the clouds because a lot of times UFOs are cloaked in clouds. The cloud is actually kind of like a cloaking device for a lot of UFOs.
Exactly.
Anyway, thank you for being on the show, Michael. It's been a great show.
Wonderful.
We're at the end of the show now. Where can we find UFO I-Team real quick?
Facebook page, they can go to UFO I-Team or UFOiteam.com on the internet.
Sounds great. And if you haven't heard of Four Spoon Paranormal, look for us on Facebook. Just look for Four Spoon Paranormal and join the group. We always talk about a plethora of topics in there, some great, some not so great. Anyway, Corey, go ahead and take us home.
Can do. I would like to thank Michael Hall, the paranormal lawyer and owner of UFO I-Team, for joining us this evening on our panel. Join us next Saturday at midnight Pacific Standard Time. We'll be talking about terrorism and politicians. That ought to be a fun subject, ladies and gentlemen. You can find us on Spreaker.com, TheFringe.fm, and KSVU 90.1. And for our local listeners, I would like to thank all of our listeners because without you, there is no S4. Good night, and remember, keep your eyes to the skies.
What started as my first coffee shop turned into 10. So I switched to the Spark Cash Card from Capital One. I earn unlimited 2% cash back on every business purchase. Like this. That's thousands of dollars going back into my business. What's in your wallet?
Capital One Bank USA, N.A.